Welcome back to Pastor Plek's podcast, where we talk faith, culture, and everything in between. So glad to have all of you back. With me in studio is Pastor Joseph Aiken III. Welcome, Joseph.
Thank you.
And also in studio is the wonderful counselor intern, Miss Lizzie Turk. So glad that you were here.
Hello.
And making sure that he gets here eventually is the ever-present Cody Sparks, who will be joining us late. So Cody I think he has to get some tables or whatnot, and so there we go.
He's a famous, Texas country singer. Everybody wants his time.
I know, and another country singer actually needed to borrow something from the church and they were just returning it, so there we go. He is now dealing country singer things. All right, so I want to get right to some questions, and some that have been coming in through the week, and I thought this was sort of a fascinating question. It says, in Luke 4, many point to the Bible as fallacy because there's no historical record of a temple, not one stone, or that type of elevation described in that location. No synagogue or brow of the hill specifically. And that question is kind of confusing, but let me go and see if I can figure out and discern what this question means. In Luke 4, when the people wanted to kill Jesus, verse 29 says they got up, forced him out of the town, and brought him to the brow of the hill on which their town was built, so that they could throw him down the cliff. But he passed through the crowd and went on his way. And what the question asks is, there is no brow of the hill on which anyone could throw somebody down. To which I'm like, how much brow of a hill do you need? This is 2,000 years ago, so elevation changes. There's all of Rome was
tectonic
buried.
Plates.
Yeah, now, even if you want to go tectonic plate movements, because there is fault lines there, so stuff could have shifted and changed, and so I don't know if I would say that's impossible. And man, Also, it just brow of the hill on which their town was built. It could have been. There's so many different. Why would they be saying that this didn't happen, based on this story? To me, that's like, if there's a flat part of Texas. Let's say you went out to Abilene and said you came to the brow of the cliff, and you threw somebody down. You're like, huh. But I bet you there's a well. I'll bet you there's something that you could find, and maybe it's part of a high side, and they built a well into it. There's a lot of different. Mm-hmm. This is where when people are criticizing the Bible, they're having to make assumptions about what was or what wasn't there. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on that, Pastor Joseph?
Well, I just think about the purpose, and you correct me if I'm wrong. Was you throw them off, then you stone them. So
right.
It's not like it's 100-foot.
Right.
Cliff that you're looking we gotta be able to keep, you don't die from the fall.
Right, you're dying from the stoning, but you have to have somewhere where everyone can throw at you. So even if it's a 5-foot cliff, and again, cliff is not in the text. It says brow of the hill on which the town was built, so that they could throw him down. So the verb in the Greek is kata it's katakreminasai, and so from the root word of katakremizo, and I feel like when you look at that, you'd say, oh, it's just to throw someone down. So there's not necessarily a cliff, but it could be a brow of the hill. Brow of the hill, you throw them down. Let's say it's 5-foot elevation change. From that 5-foot elevation change, everyone can get a rock and throw it on them. Mm-hmm. That might be where. So I feel like any way you look at this, you're gonna be able to find a reasonable explanation. And I think what happens is just because we're not there. I mean, I'm looking out here, and we're in Texas, which granted we're hill country-ish, but it's pretty flat. But if I'm looking out where the sign for the Wells Branch, Piazza is, you could go up to that brow of the hill, and there's about 10 feet elevation change? Yeah. And you could definitely stone somebody from there. So I look at that and I'm like, that's not a reason to give up on the Bible. But I do appreciate the question. Okay, next question is...
Wow, that was so, high level.
Yeah.
or very, getting into the nitty-gritty of, theological,
right. And people, I feel like people are, when you're seeking, you'll find. Knock, and it'll be open. Ask, and you'll be answered. When you're looking for error, you're going to find it. But then the reality is you're not you're not looking for truth. Look for truth in God's word. And specifically on this is not one that I'd like wreck my faith over, because in any flat area I can find a deviation in the hill which would allow me to have somewhere to throw something down. Okay. Next question on sort of a more unrelated issue. On your podcast about porn, which would have been last week, I think it was on the Impure Thoughts one with Katie. You do not have to confess to your spouse. It says you do not have to confess to your spouse about porn if it doesn't affect your relationship with your spouse. We never. So on your podcast about, did I hear correctly? You do not have to confess to your spouse about porn if it doesn't affect your relationship with your spouse. We didn't say that. So I don't know if we stopped the question there, but I'll read the rest of it. So we definitely did not say you don't have to confess to your spouse if it doesn't affect your relationship with your spouse. This does not align with what God's word says. The Bible, he did not say if your spouse is not affected by your sexual sin, don't confess them. Aren't all marriages hurt when there's a sexual sin going on and one doing it is hiding and not confessing their spouse because it's damaging to the marriage bed, adultery, all that? To which I think we're in agreement, which is where sometimes when people ask questions, I'm always like, I feel like that was probably, there's a, what's the right word for that? There's something probably loaded there. There's
it's not, it's like the, hey, I'm asking for a friend, and really, you're asking for yourself.
Right, but let's talk about, porn for a second, and what we were talking about last week is, should somebody be pulled from ministry if they look at porn? And so what we said was, if you're looking at porn and you're not confessing, you're not having a place of repentance, then you probably should be pulled so you can focus on your marriage, on getting healing and all of that. So that's the short answer that we really went to the long answer last week or so. Wanted to make sure that we covered that. Okay, we got another question that I wanted to get to was, what does it look like to share your weaknesses with others? We talked about vulnerability last week, and then throughout the week, people wanted to know more about that. And how, so two-part question. I got Cody Sparks from the Cody Sparks Band back. So glad Cody's here. What does it look like to share your weaknesses with others, and how does it look to share your weaknesses in your marriage? So let's just go right to Pastor Joseph. What does it look like to share your weaknesses with others? And just, this must be like vulnerability in general. But how does it look like to share your weaknesses in your marriage?
For me personally, I guess I would rate my weaknesses or my vulnerability with others. Like, if I have a good relationship, then we can go deep into the weeds, and I can tell you, hey, this is where I'm struggling. But I can be open with people and share, like, hey, I struggle with yelling at my kids sometimes when I'm frustrated because I have lack of sleep.
Right.
And so I can go into that. But if I want to go deep, so I think part of it is relationship is super important. So that means proximity. So being close to someone that I know I can trust, that I know they have my back, I know that they're going to give me good feedback, they're going to give me godly feedback, they're going to send me to the word, they're going to pray for me, like those kind of things. But that comes with proximity and relationship. Right. And so that's how I start. That's wherever the relationship starts, then that's where we go from there. And then it's mutual. Like, I'm vulnerable, they're vulnerable, and it's not just me just in a counseling session with this person. Right. So there's that. With my wife, I've been married for 16 years. We've been together for 18 years, so almost 2 decades with the same person. Wow. It's easy to be vulnerable, but then at the same time it can be hard. Where it's like, I don't know if this is something I need to tell. And so we try to do marriage maintenance.
And how do you do that?
Like last night, for example, we talked for about 2 hours, no TVs, no devices on, just talking just about life. And we asked intentional questions to say, hey, how are you doing? How am I doing? How have I been serving you? And like, how can I serve you better? And so we ask those type of questions to see where we are. And so that allows us to go through those things. Hey, how are you dealing with parenting? We have this new baby at home and he's not sleeping well. Right. Or how can I help serve you better? And so questions there, just vent sessions tend to happen. Like we literally 2 hours and just was talking to each other, which we hadn't done that in a while, but we tried to do it before the baby. We was doing it weekly, like, hey, marriage maintenance. And what happens is you have your hour or 2 hours that you meet, that can be lessened because you start having these conversations more often to where you don't need to do it as much. And it's, to me, it's just like I meet with Chris weekly, like, though we do it everywhere else but in our marriages, and so that's one of the reasons we do it. And so trying to get back to that,
I think that's really important. I like the way you're putting it, marriage maintenance. It's like you take your car to get an oil change every so many miles. You need to do a relationship checkup, every so often, to find out, what's the dashboard reading. And if you're not able to do that, then friction is destined to come.
And anytime there's friction, I always know that, that means we haven't sat down and talked for a while. So.
Yeah. What about you, Cody? When it comes to just first off, in general.
This is what I call therapy.
Yeah. What does it look like to share your weaknesses with others?
Initially, absolutely not, because I just never did. And
Talk to us about that and why.
I don't know. Maybe because I wanted to be just who people thought I was. And
What do you mean by that? Because there's a lot in that. Is it Cody Sparks, famous Texas country music singer?
Probably. I don't think I let people into my personal life. Yeah, not even just that. Just and think it was anybody's business.
Right.
To know what was going on in my life, until I started realizing I have a lot of issues, and I never knew it. From childhood and heart wounds and burns, and when I finally opened up and started talking about them, it was almost like burdens were dropping off, and I felt better.
Yeah.
And I also realized that I had these issues, so then I knew what my problem was, so that I could focus on that and fix it.
Yeah.
Which was huge for me, super big.
So talk to us about like the counseling process for you.
If you're gonna do it, be 100% honest and come into it just clean. So when I went through there, I just was going, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna do this wide open and just be completely upfront and honest about it. And I did, and for some reason, I was very insecure. A lot of people would be like, that guy's not insecure. But I was very, very insecure over weird things.
Yeah, talk to us about you're a Texas country music star with your songs in the top 10 on the radio.
Wait, so are you talking about, like, as far as, like, therapy goes in addressing those issues, is this, like, in your marriage or just for you individually?
It was me individually first, and then we started doing it together.
And how long have you and your wife been together?
Married?
Married and I guess, like,
Boy, we're really going. Guys, we're going on a whole hard turn here.
Well, I was gonna say, because, like, Joseph, has
Joseph's been married for 16 years. Been with his wife for 18.
That's how he always phrases it.
Yeah.
So I just am like.
Do I say that a lot?
You do.
Yeah, you do.
Anytime you mention it's 16, it's like, but it's really 18.
Yeah.
Yeah. In October will be 3 years since we were married.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I met Aaron almost 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, trying to count it in my head. So I know this. Austin was born on May.
Austin's my son.
Yeah, Chris's son Austin was born on May 6th.
May 7th.
7th, and I met Aaron May 4th.
Yeah. There you go.
I know because I came to see Austin in the
hospital. Yeah. That's
after he was born. So yeah.
Oh.
So 9 years of being together-ish.
Yeah.
And
that's always complicated. We'll keep it
All
up.
right,
like I said, I don't like people to know my personal. No, I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
But how does it?
No, you're good.
I hope I
It's
was
funny.
the counselor asking.
But how
Yeah,
does it look
that's
like to share your weakness in your marriage? Like, how are you able to do that now?
It's not easy, but because of being exposed, it's really hard because I think that sometimes if your marriage is rocky and you're going through struggles, you don't want it to get worse. Therefore, you tend to hide the things, which is a whole nother.
So does that make it worse?
At the end of the day, it will probably definitely make it worse.
Right.
Because eventually she or he will find out some way or another. And then either you're a liar or you're hiding things again, or why can't you be honest with me? It's almost talking to like a child. Well, if you were just honest with me from the get-go, it wouldn't have been this bad.
Right.
man, see, this could go so far back to my childhood even.
Yeah.
I was a preacher's kid and I was very sheltered on certain things. I couldn't play with Ninja Turtles, for example. But I would go to my friend's house across the street and play with Ninja Turtles.
Right.
But I never told that I played with Ninja Turtles. I just didn't say that I played with Ninja Turtles, but I started hiding it.
Right.
And then that transformed into later in life hiding other things and hiding other things. I never lied about it, but I didn't tell anybody about it. So therefore, what was I doing wrong? Then in your marriage, you start hiding things that you should be honest about that aren't even really that big of a deal. Or, little things like that in situations that you put yourself in because you formed a habit, and then you're really a creep.
Without a paddle.
Without a paddle.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I do think that when you talk about intimacy with your spouse, the deeper and the more intimate that you're able to get with confession and repentance and really allowing the Lord to speak into it, the more you're able to really enjoy your spouse. And it's hard, and I really appreciate what you said about there's times where you just I can just leave that out, and then it's easier in the moment, but later on when your wife finds out that you did this or this happened, then it feels like a betrayal as opposed to that thing happened, and circumstances beyond my control, and you're just like, I just don't want to reveal that, but if I don't reveal that, it creates a whole dilemma. So why not just be really open on the front end? And I think that's where intimacy is grown, is you start to begin to trust. It may not mean that you like things that your spouse does, but you at least can trust them that what they're telling you is the truth, and you're not having to go behind their back to kind of go figure out what did they really mean, or what are they really trying to say. That becomes a super challenge. So I think whenever we talk about dating, relationships, marriage, sharing weaknesses with others is really helpful because it allows people to really know you, and so there isn't the knowledge curve of who you pretended to be versus who you actually are whenever you get married. Because right now Lizzie's dating, and so she's putting on a front for her boyfriend, and he's putting on some sort of front for her, right? And we all do it. We're not sitting there trying to masquerade our flaws, but you're not thinking, I'm going to put my worst self out there. I mean, nobody is doing that.
What's funny is there have actually been a couple of things where I was like, yeah, so I should probably share this about
Nice.
about my life, and it's that was maybe 4 months into the relationship, and it was kind of it wasn't any sort of well, I'm secretly a spy or something, or
I'm a drug dealer on the side.
Yeah, nothing like that, but it was just it's this intimate part of myself that I was I don't want to just blast out there for anyone to know.
Sure.
I wanted that trust to be there first.
Yeah, and I think here's good advice just for people who are dating. Don't emotionally get married in your head before you're actually married. Mm-hmm. And then so your trust should grow, and what you reveal about yourself should grow over time. Don't just kind of lay out the whole enchilada. And so, because there's two ways that goes. One, you lay it all out there and someone just says, oh wow, they really connected with me, but then you leave out this huge chunk that's actually the very real thing that you never shared, and but it feels like you've shared all this intimacy and you've got all this detail, but you've left out something huge, and then you never bring that up, and all of a sudden someone's like, oh, I thought I knew everything. No, you actually didn't. I just wanted you to think that you knew everything. I shared just enough so that you'd see the vulnerability that I was showing, and then you'd reveal all about you, and then now all of a sudden you're sort of stuck and you don't even realize it. So anyway, I know that might be a whole lot for people to swallow, but bottom line, in dating, over time, share more and more and more, and then there's certain things you just want to make sure you're not married in your head before you're married in reality, and I think that's probably a wise thing to wrap ourselves up with, or wrap our head around.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I feel like we're at the place where we're about to do a special luncheon for Grayson, who is, one of the things we've talked about. He is leaving full-time, or he's left full-time staff and is now part-time to be a police officer in Cincinnati.
And who was Grayson to us?
Pastor.
For the listeners.
Yeah, he was a worship pastor, executive pastor. He was an all things pastor. He made jack of all trades pastor that did a lot here, and we're so grateful for him. And so we're going to cut this podcast short so we can go celebrate him. And we'll post some stuff on social media about it, so you'll get to be able to experience it with us all. So yeah, anyway, if you want to join the conversation, you can text us at 737-231-0605. Would love to hear from you and anyone listening, and tell a friend. Make sure you share this podcast, and make sure you let us know what any thoughts or feedback that you might have. We'd love to hear from you. So from Austin, Texas, have an awesome week of worship.